I should have known something was off the moment I walked into the private dining room, and half the people weren't even looking at me. They were whispering, heads tilted toward each other, phones angled low under the table. It was my birthday, my 28th, and the atmosphere felt more like a press conference than a celebration. The waiter popped the champagne, glasses filled, and my husband, Ryan, stood up with his phone in his hand like he'd been rehearsing this moment all day. I expected a sweet toast, maybe even a speech about our future. Instead, he cleared his throat, tapped the glass with a fork, and smirked. "To my beautiful wife, Elizabeth," he started, dragging out every syllable like he was performing. "The woman who was lucky enough to marry me, and the woman who wouldn't be half as polished if not for me teaching her how to live in the real world." The room chuckled nervously. My stomach dropped. I froze mid-smile, my glass still hovering near my lips. He went on. "Let's be honest, sweetheart. You had the money, sure. You had the name. But I gave you style. I gave you confidence. Without me, you'd still be hiding behind your family's fortune, playing ranch princess while the world passed you by." I heard a few gasps, a muffled cough. My brother shifted in his chair, his knuckles white against the stem of his glass. Before I could speak, the door burst open. A woman in a crimson dress strutted in like she owned the place, her heels clicking across the marble floor. Heads turned, whispers surged. She didn't hesitate, didn't blink. She walked straight up to the center of the room and planted herself next to Ryan. "Are you seriously celebrating like nothing's happening?" she snapped, her voice slicing through the air. "You told me tonight was the night you'd make it official." My heart stopped. The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Someone dropped a fork. Whispers rose into open murmurs. "And Ryan?" Ryan just grinned. "This is Jade," he announced, like he was introducing a guest speaker. "She's been by my side for a while now, and since Liz here has more than enough to go around, it's only fair Jade gets her share too." The words hit me like a car crash. Share. He wasn't just flaunting the affair. He was implying my inheritance, my money, was up for grabs. Jade leaned on the back of a chair, staring me down with venom in her eyes. "I don't know why you're acting shocked, Elizabeth. Everyone knows your wealth came from your daddy's ranch and oil stocks. Ryan deserves more than a trophy wife with a trust fund. And I'm not here to beg. I'm here to claim what's mine." The audacity of it stole the air from the room. Phones were up now, recording. The humiliation was live, captured in pixels and whispers, spreading before I could even form a word. I stood, my chair scraping back with a screech that cut through the noise. My hands were trembling, but my voice came out sharp, clear and louder than I thought possible. "You walk into my birthday party, stand in my face, and dare to demand a cent from me? Let me make something perfectly clear. You will never touch a dime of my fortune. Not a penny, not a breath." Jade scoffed, rolling her eyes. "We'll see about that. He told me there's no prenup, that everything is community property." Laughter, hers, high-pitched, shrill, triumphant. That was the moment my fury surged past the humiliation. I walked around the table, heels clicking, every eye locked on me. I stopped right in front of Ryan. His smirk faltered when he realized I wasn't crumbling. "There's a prenup, sweetheart," I spat, inches from his face. "An ironclad one. Signed, sealed, notarized. And the only community property you'll be sharing with her," I turned, glaring at Jade, "is the tab you both rack up while you burn through what little pride you have left." The room gasped. Someone clapped. My brother muttered, "Hell yes," under his breath. Ryan's face flushed crimson, his jaw tight. He reached out like he could grab my arm and reel me back in, but I slapped his hand away so hard the sound echoed. "You just embarrassed me in front of everyone I know," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "You mocked my family, my money, and my name. But here's the thing you've forgotten, Ryan. That name built this city long before you slithered into it. And I promise you, tonight is the last time you'll ever stand above me." I didn't wait for his response. I turned, lifted my chin, and walked out of the room as flashes from phones lit my back like paparazzi. Every step felt heavier, but every step also felt like fire building in my chest. I pushed through the glass doors into the cool Dallas night, the sound of muffled chaos fading behind me. My vision blurred, tears stinging the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Because in that moment, outside that restaurant, I swore to myself. Ryan and his little mistress had just written their own obituary in my life. They wanted to humiliate me. They wanted to strip me bare in front of everyone. Fine. But now I was going to make sure they paid. Every cent, every breath, every ounce of comfort they thought they had left, I would take it all. And when I was finished, they'd wish they never even knew my name. When I first met Ryan, I thought he was different from every man I'd grown up around. Dallas society boys loved fast cars, faster women, and living off their parents' money. Ryan, on the other hand, talked about ambition, grit, and carving out his own path. That charm worked on me instantly. I was 23, still adjusting to the idea that my parents' passing left me not only grieving, but also responsible for a sizable inheritance. He swooped in at a time when I felt vulnerable, telling me he admired how grounded I was despite the wealth. Looking back, I see how carefully he chose those words. My family's money came from ranching and oil, old Texas money that had been in the Morgans for generations. I didn't inherit it to flaunt. It came with pressure, expectations, and the weight of a legacy. My role wasn't to spend it, it was to protect it. I spent hours with advisors, worked to modernize investments, and made sure my younger cousins would have their share too. Ryan said he loved that about me, that I wasn't some spoiled socialite. He told me he wanted to build something alongside me. I believed him. I sacrificed more than I realized at the time. Opportunities to travel, to study abroad, even to take leadership in the family businesses. I passed them up to support Ryan's ventures. First, it was a tech startup that drained thousands. Then, a gym concept that never got off the ground. Each time, I wrote the checks, told myself marriage meant standing by your partner. He promised he'd pay it back once his big break hit. It never did. There were signs, of course. Late nights, working that stretched until morning. Receipts tucked into his jacket pocket from places I'd never been. A perfume scent on his shirt that sure as hell wasn't mine. I confronted him more than once. He'd laugh, smooth my hair, and spin a story so confident I felt foolish for even asking. He had a gift for making me second-guess my own instincts. What kept me holding on was the image I had of our future. Children running through the same ranch fields I grew up in. A stable home where family dinners meant something. I wasn't naive. I knew marriage took work. But I believed in loyalty, in building something together. And I believed that if I just gave him time, his efforts would pay off. The cracks widened last year. I found charges on our joint card for luxury hotels, jewelry that never made it into my jewelry box, and restaurants far outside our usual routine. When I asked, he accused me of controlling him, of monitoring his every move like some paranoid wife. That cut deeper than the receipts. I wanted to trust him, so I forced myself to let it go. The truth slapped me harder than anything I could have imagined. It was my younger sister Caroline, who finally handed me the proof I could no longer deny. She showed up at my house one afternoon with a look I'll never forget. Half pity, half fury. She pulled up photos on her phone. Ryan and Jade hand in hand, stepping out of a hotel. Ryan's arm around her waist like she was the one carrying his last name. My chest tightened and my vision blurred. I couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe for a moment. I wanted to throw the phone, scream at my sister for shattering the illusion I had clung to. But deep down, I already knew. Every excuse, every late night, every receipt, they all lined up into one undeniable truth. Ryan wasn't just unfaithful. He was reckless, arrogant, and convinced he could keep feeding off my fortune while parading his mistress in plain sight. And now that I had confirmation, there was no going back. The morning after my birthday party, I woke up with the kind of clarity that felt almost violent. The humiliation still burned in my chest, but it wasn't the kind that left me paralyzed. It was the kind that lit a fuse. I'd spent years bending, shrinking, excusing, waiting for Ryan to become the man I thought he was. That version of me, the one who kept giving chances, died the moment Jade opened her mouth in front of my family and friends. I swung my legs out of bed and made a list. Not a list of what I'd lost, but of what I still had. Assets, accounts, property deeds, trust documents, everything my parents had spent decades building, everything I had carefully managed, everything that was mine before Ryan ever touched my life. He had tried to humiliate me publicly, but he didn't know the half of what he was up against. The first call I made was to my lawyer. Mr. Howard had been with my family for years. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told him about the mistress, the public humiliation, the threats about my money. His voice stayed steady, professional, but there was steel underneath. Elizabeth, you're protected. That prenup is airtight. What we need to do now is freeze access before he tries to get clever. Within hours, my accounts were locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Every joint account was converted to my control, every credit line shut off. The cards in Ryan's wallet turned into useless pieces of plastic. I imagined the look on his face when his business lunch bill came back declined, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Next, I called a storage company. By that evening, movers arrived at the house, loading my essentials: clothes, personal documents, jewelry, the few pieces of furniture that actually meant something to me. I didn't bother with the rest. Let him enjoy the empty echo of rooms he thought he'd conquered. I packed quickly, efficiently, fueled by adrenaline. Every time my hands shook, I reminded myself why I was doing this. The receipts, the lies, the sight of Jade's smirk in that crimson dress. I repeated their faces like a mantra until the fear hardened into resolve. When Ryan finally stumbled home late that night, smelling of whiskey and arrogance, he found me standing by the door with a suitcase. He laughed at first, like it was all a performance for my benefit. "Come on, Liz," he said, loosening his tie. "Don't be dramatic. You'll cool down. You always do." But I didn't flinch. Not this time. His smile faltered. "Where are you even going?" "Somewhere you can't follow," I said flatly. "You'll figure it out when your card gets declined at breakfast." The flash of panic in his eyes was almost worth the years I'd wasted. He reached for me, but I stepped back. For the first time, he realized I wasn't bluffing. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I simply walked out with my suitcase, slid into the back of the car waiting for me, and didn't look back. Over the next few days, I became a machine. Phone calls, signatures, meetings. I wasn't just leaving him. I was erasing him from every piece of my financial landscape. The house went on the market under my name alone. The joint business accounts he had siphoned into, closed. The shares I had foolishly placed in his care, reclaimed through legal channels before he could even blink. Meanwhile, his phone calls started flooding in. At first, they were smug. Voicemails dripping with fake confidence, promises that I'd come back once I cooled off. Then, when the money dried up, they turned frantic. "Liz, call me back. This is insane. You can't just cut me out like this." Yes, I could. And I did. The moment I knew I had turned the tables came 3 days later, when Caroline called me laughing. She'd run into Ryan at a bar downtown. He'd tried to pay for drinks with his platinum card, only to have it declined twice in front of his buddies. "He looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him," she said, her voice bubbling with satisfaction. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling. The humiliation he'd tried to dump on me was starting to circle back where it belonged. But this was only the beginning. Cutting him off financially was step 1. Stripping him of his illusion of control was step 2. Now, I had to make sure everyone else, our friends, his colleagues, the very people who'd witnessed my birthday disaster, saw the truth. He thought he'd embarrassed me beyond repair. He had no idea I was just warming up. That night, lying in a quiet apartment that finally felt like mine, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You started this war, Ryan. I'm just the one finishing it. And as his calls kept piling up, unanswered, I knew the game had officially changed. The fallout came quicker than even I expected. By the end of the week, Ryan was spiraling. His calls had gone from smug to frantic, then to pure rage. I stopped listening after the 50th voicemail, but the fragments I caught painted a perfect picture of his decline. Do you realize what you've done? You're embarrassing me. This is theft. And finally, please, Liz, just talk to me. That one almost made me laugh. The financial noose tightened with every day that passed. His gym membership was frozen. His business lunches became awkward spectacles when the bill hit the table, and even the mistress who'd marched into my birthday party like a queen started to panic. I heard about it from a mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist sharing the gossip. Jade had been bragging to her friends about the life Ryan promised her. New condo, luxury car, shopping trips. Within days, those promises evaporated. The car dealership called her bluff when the financing didn't clear. The condo paperwork? Dead in the water once the bank saw his assets locked. Suddenly, the queen was back to waiting tables to cover her bills. The image of her in that crimson dress demanding my money replayed in my head. I wondered how it felt for her to swipe her card at a boutique and hear the cashier whisper, "Declined." Humiliation has a funny way of circling back. Meanwhile, the Dallas social circle moved fast. Word of the birthday disaster spread like wildfire. Everyone who mattered had seen the video clips. Ryan's smug toast, Jade's outburst, my calm dismantling of them both. People who once fawned over him now treated him like a walking cautionary tale. At networking events, his name was a punchline. At bars, he was the guy people pointed at, whispering, "That's him," the one who got burned by his wife. What surprised me most wasn't the gossip itself, but how quickly allies revealed themselves. Friends I thought were neutral reached out with quiet support. Business partners of his called me directly, saying they wanted no further dealings with him but respected how I'd handled myself. My brother, who had nearly lunged across the table the night of my birthday, became my fiercest defender, making sure everyone knew exactly where loyalties should lie. Ryan didn't take it well. He showed up at my old house one afternoon, pounding on the door until the neighbor threatened to call the police. I watched the whole thing from my car parked down the street. He looked unshaven, hair disheveled, shirt wrinkled. This was a man who once obsessed over his image, reduced to screaming on the front porch like a desperate salesman. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't even flinch. I let him rant into the wind, powerless, and drove away when I'd had enough. The real dagger came when his family turned their backs. His older brother, who had always bailed him out financially, called me directly to apologize. "I warned him," he said. "Told him not to mess with you. He's on his own now." It was cold, but it was exactly what Ryan deserved. Jade wasn't faring any better. Caroline sent me screenshots of her social media rants, long, bitter posts about how some women don't know how to share, and how real men aren't chained by paperwork. The comments section was brutal. Friends who once envied her glow-up dragged her through the mud. She deleted the post within hours, but not before screenshots spread. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not joy, peace. The chaos that Ryan and Jade had tried to force onto me was folding back onto them, and I hadn't lifted a finger beyond the first decisive moves. Still, I knew better than to think they'd give up quietly. People like Ryan don't surrender, they scheme, and people like Jade don't fade, they claw. That's why, when my phone lit up late one night with his number for the 100th time, I stared at the screen longer than usual. I didn't answer. I wanted him to sit with the silence. I wanted him to feel what it was like to reach for someone and find nothing there. Because this was only the beginning. He was desperate now, but desperation makes people reckless. And I was ready for whatever came next. I knew it was coming. After weeks of silence, Ryan wasn't going to fade into the background. He needed an audience, a stage, some pathetic attempt to claw back his pride. And sure enough, it happened at one of Dallas's most polished spots. a high-end restaurant where half the city's deals were made over steak and cocktails. I didn't go there to see him. I went because a close friend invited me, promising good company and a distraction. But the moment I stepped into the dining room, I felt the tension tighten around me like a noose. Ryan was there. And not alone. Jade sat beside him, her dress too bright, her smile stretched too thin, both of them acting like they belonged. The whispers started immediately. Forks paused mid-air, phones slid out under tables. Everyone knew what this was. Round 2. Ryan spotted me before I could turn away. He shot up from his chair, raising his glass as if I'd just walked into my own birthday party again. "Elizabeth!" His voice boomed louder than necessary, carrying through the room. "Care to join us? We were just talking about you." I froze, then forced a smile, walking straight toward their table. My heels clicked against the polished wood floor, each step louder than the last. If he wanted a show, I'd give him one. "Talking about me?" I said, leaning on the table. "That seems to be your favorite pastime these days." Jade smirked, swirling her wine. "We were discussing how unfair it is that you're hoarding all the assets. Ryan deserves better after everything he's given you." The audacity was laughable. "Everything he's given me?" I tilted my head. "Do you mean the credit card debt, the unpaid business loans, or the public humiliation?" A few nearby tables chuckled under their breath. Jade's smirk faltered. Ryan leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to pretend he had control. "Liz, you're making a mistake dragging this out. People will talk less if you just settle, give me what's fair, and move on." I pulled my phone from my clutch, tapped the screen, and turned it toward him. "You mean like these?" Screenshots of his text to Jade glowed on the display. Promises of money, lies about our marriage, filthy details not meant for public eyes. Gasps rippled through the room as heads craned closer. Jade's face drained of color. "You said you deleted those," she hissed. Ryan's jaw locked, but the damage was done. The room erupted in whispers, the kind that spread faster than any official announcement. Phones were already snapping photos of my screen, capturing evidence that would race across Dallas society before dessert even hit the table. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "You thought you humiliated me once. But this is the moment people will remember. Not your toast. Not her little tantrum. This." I straightened, raised my voice just enough to carry. "Ryan Morgan doesn't just cheat. He lies, manipulates, and steals. And now he's out of money, out of options, and out of excuses." The room fell silent for a beat. Then came the low murmur of approval, the shifting of bodies turning against him. Someone clapped. Someone else laughed outright. Jade shoved her chair back, grabbed her purse, and stormed out, leaving Ryan alone at the table, eyes darting, face crimson. I turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the room. "You wanted an audience, Ryan. Congratulations. Everyone's watching, and this time they're not laughing with you." I walked out to the sound of muffled laughter, my pulse steady, my spine straight. Behind me, the whispers swelled, feeding on him like vultures. The mic drop moment wasn't rehearsed, but it was perfect. By the time I slid into the back of the car waiting outside, my phone was already buzzing with messages. "You handled that perfectly. You destroyed him. That line is going everywhere." And it did. Within hours, the confrontation spread across social media, clips and quotes twisted into hashtags that trended for days. Ryan thought he could win back the narrative by staging a public dinner. Instead, I left him abandoned in the spotlight, the world watching as his mistress walked out and his reputation collapsed. I expected him to crawl away and lick his wounds after Jade stormed out of that restaurant, but I should have known better. Ryan was addicted to attention. He needed the world to see him as the victim, even if he had to twist reality until it snapped. His first move came online. A carefully worded post appeared on his Instagram. "Marriage is complicated. I made mistakes, but I'll always love Elizabeth. Please respect our privacy during this painful time." Privacy? From the man who paraded his mistress into my birthday dinner? The comments shredded him before I even had to. Didn't you bring another woman to her party? Privacy? After the way you humiliated her? Sit down, clown. Still, he didn't stop there. 2 days later, he landed himself a spot on a Dallas morning show, sitting stiff in a navy blazer, eyes watery like he'd practiced in the mirror. I watched the interview on my phone, my coffee going cold as he tried to spin our marriage into a sob story. "Elizabeth is a wonderful woman," he told the host, voice dripping with false sincerity. "But money changes people. When you grow up with everything handed to you, you don't understand struggle." I was suffocating. I made mistakes, but I'm not the monster people think. The host nodded along, clearly uncomfortable. Ryan even pulled out a tissue at one point, dabbing his eyes, milking the performance for every ounce of sympathy. He thought the crocodile tears would work. He thought people would buy it. But the internet isn't stupid. Clips of his interviews spread within hours, spliced together with screenshots of his texts, videos of the birthday fiasco, and photos of Jade on his arm. Someone even slowed down the moment his fake tears started, zooming in to show how dry his eyes really were. The caption read, "Academy Award goes to Ryan Morgan, worst husband in Dallas." It went viral overnight, and then came the receipts. I hadn't planned on releasing them myself. I didn't need to. A friend of a friend leaked the folder, text messages, hotel confirmations, voice recordings of his phone calls with Jade. I'd collected them quietly, ready for divorce court. But once they hit the internet, they exploded. In one recording, Ryan bragged to Jade, "She doesn't even check the statements. I could drain her blind, and she'd still kiss me goodnight." In another, Jade laughed, asking, "When do I get my condo?" And Ryan replied, "Soon, once I get Liz to loosen her grip. She's too uptight about her fortune. But once it's mine, it's ours." Those clips spread faster than wildfire. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, every platform lit up with people tearing him apart. Hashtags trended. Gold-digging Ryan, Prenup Princess, Cryin' Ryan. Memes poured in, his fake tear-smeared face pasted over soap opera posters, his condo promise turned into audio remixes. Everywhere he looked, his name was a joke. Jade tried to backtrack too, posting a shaky selfie video claiming she never wanted to come between a marriage, and that Ryan lied to both of us. But no one bought it. Screenshots proved she knew exactly what she was doing. She became collateral damage, her social media flooded with insults until she finally deleted every account. The final blow came when one of Ryan's business partners issued a public statement cutting ties. "We cannot condone behavior that disrespects family and integrity." Effective immediately, Ryan Morgan is no longer affiliated with our brand. That one made me smile. His reputation wasn't just ruined socially, it was bleeding professionally too. I didn't post a word. I didn't need to. The receipts spoke louder than anything I could have said. The silence made it worse for him. Every time he tried to push his version of the story, the world shoved the truth back in his face. Caroline texted me late one night, "You're trending. People are calling you the queen of quiet revenge." I laughed out loud. Not because I wanted the spotlight, but because it proved what I already knew. Ryan had underestimated me. He thought public humiliation would break me. Instead, it made me sharper, stronger, and untouchable. By the end of the week, Ryan stopped posting altogether. His Instagram went dark, his phone calls dwindled, and the only trace of him left online were the memes that refused to die. For once, the silence wasn't mine. It was his, and it was deafening. The court filings hit him like a wrecking ball. I made sure of it. No warning, no soft let-in, just a process server showing up at his temporary apartment with a thick stack of papers that spelled the end. Divorce, full enforcement of the prenup, and a petition for immediate separation of assets. Ryan called me within minutes, voice shaking with rage. "You can't do this to me. We can work it out privately." Click. There would be no private negotiations, not anymore. My lawyer, Mr. Howard, had prepared every detail with surgical precision. The prenup wasn't just a sheet of paper, it was a fortress. It stated clearly that any attempt at infidelity would void his claims to marital support. The hotel receipts, the photos, the texts, all of it built a case so airtight he didn't stand a chance. When the first hearing rolled around, Ryan tried to walk into the courtroom like he owned it. Navy suit, fake confidence, chin high. But the minute our attorneys presented the evidence, his mask cracked. The judge reviewed everything quietly, lips pressed in disapproval, then turned to him with a look I'll never forget. "Mr. Morgan, it seems your actions leave very little room for argument here." Very little room indeed. The financial dismantling happened piece by piece. The joint accounts were already frozen, but now, officially, he was cut off from every dollar tied to my name. The house, my family's property, was confirmed mine alone. Every business venture he'd pitched as ours turned out to be mine on paper, thanks to the clauses Howard insisted on years ago. Ryan tried to argue that he'd contributed sweat equity. The judge raised an eyebrow and asked, "Do you have documentation of that?" He had none. By the end of the first month, he was living off scraps, borrowing from friends who quickly realized he had nothing to pay them back with. His credit cards were maxed, his name was toxic, and his landlord filed an eviction notice when the rent checks bounced. And then came his family. His older brother, the one who had quietly bailed him out for years, cut him off completely. "You humiliated us," he told Ryan in court, his voice cold and final. "Dragging our name through the mud, thinking you could con your wife and parade your mistress like it wouldn't come back to us. We're done." His parents didn't even show up to the hearings. Word was, they told friends they had no son by that name anymore. Harsh? Maybe. But Ryan had always leaned on them like a spoiled teenager, expecting endless forgiveness. This time, he'd burned the bridge to ash. Jade disappeared from the picture entirely. After her social media meltdown and the condo fantasy crumbled, she stopped showing up to hearings, stopped calling him altogether. Rumor had it she fled Dallas for Houston, back to waiting tables. Whatever empire she thought Ryan would hand her evaporated, and she wasn't sticking around to suffer with him. I almost pitied him the day he showed up to court alone. His lawyer had withdrawn after Ryan couldn't pay the retainer. He stood there in a wrinkled suit, clutching a folder that probably felt like his last shred of dignity. The judge didn't soften. "Mr. Morgan, failure to retain counsel does not excuse you from the proceedings. We move forward." Move forward. We did. The final settlement stripped him bare. No spousal support, no share of assets, no access to property. Even the car he drove, a Mercedes registered in my name, was repossessed by order of the court. Watching him stand in the parking lot, staring at the tow truck hauling it away, felt like justice in motion. But the financial destruction was only half the story. Socially, he was radioactive. Business contacts wanted nothing to do with him. Friends he once bragged about at parties ghosted him. He became the man no one wanted near their table, a liability, a walking scandal. Every time he tried to show his face in public, whispers followed. The man who once thrived on being noticed was now mocked for existing. I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The machine of consequence had taken over. Still, I wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. I didn't relish in every voicemail he left, begging me for just one more chance. But I saved them anyway, just in case he ever tried to twist the narrative again. Evidence was my shield, and I wasn't laying it down. The custody issue was the only part that tested me. We didn't have children together, but I had custody of my younger cousin temporarily, an arrangement my parents had set in motion before they passed. Ryan tried to use that, claiming he'd been a father figure and deserved visitation. The court shut him down immediately. "Parental rights are not assigned through marriage, Mr. Morgan," the judge said, tone sharp. "Your behavior suggests you would not be a suitable guardian even if they were." That day, I walked out of court with my cousin's hand in mine, and for the first time, I felt free. Ryan, on the other hand, walked out with nothing but a folder of losses and a future shrinking by the hour. He had no home, no car, no money, and no one left to call. Caroline summed it up perfectly one evening over wine. He tried to turn you into his downfall story. Instead, you turned him into his own punchline. I nodded, staring out at the Dallas skyline. He wanted to destroy me. He didn't realize I could survive without him. But he can't survive without me. By the time the divorce was finalized, Ryan wasn't just stripped of wealth. He was stripped of identity. The husband who once strutted into parties by my side was now the ghost people crossed the street to avoid. And I was lighter, stronger, untethered. For months I had lived with the humiliation he forced onto me. But now, the humiliation was his alone. Court-certified, bank-stamped, family-sealed. Ryan Morgan had nothing left but his own reflection, and even that was starting to crack. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday afternoon. The judge's gavel came down with a hollow thud that echoed like a closing door. And just like that, Ryan was legally out of my life. No assets, no support, no excuses. His face when the ruling was read will live in my memory forever. Jaw tight, eyes darting like he was searching for an escape hatch that wasn't there. I gathered my things, ready to leave, when I heard it. His voice, strained and desperate. Liz, please, just give me 5 minutes. Every instinct told me to keep walking, but something in me wanted the closure of hearing him out. So I followed him into a quiet hallway outside the courtroom, away from the buzzing crowd of reporters and onlookers. It was just the two of us, facing each other like the last scene of a tragedy neither of us could rewrite. He looked smaller somehow. His suit hung loose, like he'd lost weight, and his eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. Gone was the polished, arrogant man who once strutted into rooms like he owned them. What stood in front of me now was a shell. Liz! His voice cracked. I messed up. I know I did. But you can't just cut me out like this. We were married. We had a life. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall, my heels clicking once against the tile just to remind him I wasn't rattled. It did mean something. Until you dragged a mistress into my birthday dinner and demanded my money in front of my family. Until you lied, stole, and laughed in my face while doing it. He flinched, running a hand through his unkempt hair. I was stupid. I was selfish. But I loved you, Liz. I still love you. Jade was nothing. I don't even know why I... Stop. My voice was sharper than I expected, and it silenced him instantly. You don't get to rewrite history now. You didn't trip and fall into betrayal. You chose it. Over and over again. You made promises to me while whispering lies to her. That wasn't love. That was convenience. That was greed. His eyes glistened, but I wasn't moved. I can change, he said quietly. I can be better. Just give me a chance to prove it. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You had years of chances, Ryan. You had every opportunity to be better. Instead, you took and took until there was nothing left to give. You wanted me broken, dependent, humiliated. And now that the tables have turned, suddenly you're ready to change? No, that's not growth. That's desperation. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. I can't do this without you. You're all I had. That was the truest thing he'd said all day, and it was exactly why I couldn't let him back in. I straightened, meeting his eyes without a flicker of doubt. That's the difference between us. I can stand on my own. I always could. You were just too blind to see it. You thought my money was my foundation, but it was never about the money. It was about me, my strength, my name, my family. You tried to strip all of that from me, but all you did was strip yourself bare. His shoulders sagged, his head dropping like the weight of reality finally crushed him. So that's it? He muttered. You're really walking away? Yes. My voice was steady, calm. You're the architect of your own destruction, and I'm done watching you build ruins. Silence fell between us, thick and final. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but no words came. For the first time, Ryan Morgan was speechless. I turned, heels clicking against the floor. each step carrying me farther from the wreckage he'd made of himself. I didn't look back. Not when he called my name, not when I heard the scrape of his shoes shifting behind me. The sound of his voice no longer pulled me. It only pushed me forward. When I stepped outside, the Dallas sun hit my face, warm and blinding. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions, cameras flashing. I didn't answer any of them. I just slid my sunglasses on, held my head high, and walked straight through the chaos with the kind of calm only freedom can bring. Behind me, Ryan was left in the shadows of the courthouse hallway, alone with his failures. Ahead of me stretched a life that was mine again, untethered, unbroken, and entirely in my control. That final confrontation wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. And as I walked away, I knew I'd never need to hear his voice again. 6 months after the divorce, I hardly recognized my own life, and that was the best part. The weight I'd carried for years, the constant second-guessing, the humiliation, all of it had burned away. What remained was sharper, stronger, freer. I moved into a modern loft downtown, all glass and sunlight. Nothing like the house where Ryan's shadow lingered. Every corner reflected me, my choices, my taste, my independence. I decorated slowly, intentionally. No rushed purchases, no compromises. For the first time, every detail of my home felt like mine alone. Career-wise, I stopped playing small. I took the reins of my family's businesses, steering investments myself instead of letting Ryan meddle with empty ventures. I doubled the value of our ranch properties, launched a philanthropic arm in my parents' name, and made sure my younger cousins had opportunities I once sacrificed. The press started calling me Dallas's quiet powerhouse. And while I didn't care much for the headlines, I liked the truth behind them. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And my personal life? Peaceful. No constant monitoring of receipts, no late-night excuses, no waking up beside someone I didn't trust. Just quiet mornings with coffee on the balcony, laughter-filled dinners with Caroline, and weekends spent with my cousin at the ranch, teaching her the same values my parents once taught me. Love would come again someday, maybe. But for now, I was whole without it. Every now and then, Ryan's name still surfaced. A friend mentioned spotting him at a rundown bar, nursing cheap whiskey and ranting to anyone who would listen. Someone else said he was crashing on a buddy's couch, burned through every favor he had left. No job, no allies, no reputation. Just the ghost of a man who once thought he could own me. I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. Watching his fall wasn't about revenge now. It was about balance. Actions have consequences, and his had finally caught up with him. He built his destruction brick by brick, and when it collapsed, I simply stepped aside. One evening, as the sun set over Dallas, painting the skyline in gold, I found myself reflecting on everything. Betrayal had nearly broken me. It stripped me bare in front of the world, but in that rawness, I discovered something Ryan could never touch: my strength. Freedom didn't just mean walking away from him. It meant reclaiming myself. It meant understanding that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how public the humiliation, there is always a way back. If you choose yourself first. I lifted my glass of wine that night, looking out over the city that had witnessed my humiliation and my rise. To freedom, I whispered, letting the words settle in the air. Ryan Morgan was irrelevant now. A cautionary tale whispered in bars, a meme on social media, a man who once thought he could claim my fortune and ended up with nothing. Me? I wasn't just Elizabeth Morgan, the wife who got cheated on. I was Elizabeth Morgan, the woman who rebuilt, who rose higher, who turned betrayal into power. And that was the real ending. Not his downfall, my transformation. Thank you for watching my story. If you've ever faced betrayal or a moment that changed everything, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them.